All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Paul Richmond. I really appreciate the invitation to get to come and spend some time hanging out with you. I want to just get through this talking part quickly so I can spend as much time painting as possible. I think it's always really fun to get to watch other artists work. I do that a lot myself. I follow all my favorite artists on YouTube and I love to watch them just do their thing because I feel like you can pick up some tips and tricks that you can apply to your own work that way. And as I go, I will kind of be explaining to you what I'm doing, my thought process behind it, but please feel free to ask questions or if you just want to chat. This doesn't have to be super serious. We can make jokes or whatever. I'm very extroverted. It actually helps me if you talk to me. Usually when I'm painting in my studio, I like to listen to podcasts or music or something to distract my brain, keep me from overthinking. So today that's your job. And I'm going to be painting a portrait of my friend Dominique Ann. She's another local artist. Maybe some of you know her. She does really awesome fashion design work. Performs in a lot of the different events around town, like in Sand City and stuff. So I took a photo of her not long ago at my studio, and I'll be painting from the photo. And just to kind of bring you up to speed with where I'm at so far in the process, I really haven't done much, but I hate painting on a white canvas. So I started out by covering my whole canvas just with abstract color. So that's all that I've done so far. I will begin the portrait now, but I like bringing up the image out of the chaos of just random colors and brush strokes on the canvas. That's my own personal preference. So if you want, you could spotlight the Paul Richmond studio window now, and then they can watch me work. All right. Hi. All right, here we go. So you can see my chaotic canvas here. And I've mixed up a bunch of colors. When I paint, I use every color that I have. And then I still don't have all the colors I want sometimes, and I have to mix more. I paint a lot with my palette knife, as you'll see. Oh, and this is oil, by the way. I do primarily oil paintings. I love painting figures, portraits, pretty much everything I paint has a person in it. My work early on was a little bit more rendered and kind of realistic, almost photorealistic, very smooth. And then I got bored with that and I wanted to start playing with texture and being more expressive. So I started painting with the palette knife, and that helped me a lot. So that's where we're at. I'm going to start out by just kind of getting some landmarks placed on the canvas so I make sure everything's sort of where it's supposed to be, and then I'll start painting. All right. So are there other oil painters in the group here? Anybody else? It doesn't have to be portraits, but any other oil painters? I know Brenda is. I saw Brenda.
Right. I do oil as well. Could you show us your reference photo? You said you took absolutely. A photo and
yes, let me see if I can share my screen. I have it up here on my.
Oh, wait.
Or I can send it through the chat.
That would be good. I'd also be curious, what size are you working? Is that 24 inches square?
It's 24 by 30.
24 by 30.
Okay, I just sent the reference photo through the chat, so it should be coming up pretty soon.
Paul, okay. What is some of your art education background?
Yes, I'm from Ohio originally, so I went to college there. I went to Columbus College of Art and Design, and I majored in illustration. So I really have always loved storytelling, making art that has some sort of a narrative even. And I do mostly fine art now, but I have done a lot of commercial illustration work too. I've illustrated over 400 novel covers, and I've done a lot of different kinds of things. But now I primarily do paintings for galleries and commissions and stuff like that. But it still has my illustrative flair. I love to tell stories. When I graduated from college, I started a mural painting business with a friend of mine. And we did that for a few years. So I got really comfortable painting big. This feels very small for me right now. I would prefer to be painting on a gigantic canvas, but you know, we only have an hour and a half here. So let's see. But then after the murals, then I kind of started doing more fine art work and really fell in love with that, with being able to just paint whatever I want. I never get tired of faces. I just think that every face has a story to tell, especially when it's people I know. I love that. Dominique's so cool, so it's fun to get to channel some of her energy today. I think we're getting her laid in. I have to keep backing up. That's why I'm make sure everything's looking all right. Okay.
How long have you been painting portraits? I'm sorry if you're repeating yourself.
Oh, no, that's okay. You ask anything you want. I've been, gosh, well, whenever anybody asks me how long I've been painting in general, I always say my whole life, because I was 3 years old and all I wanted to do was draw. And my parents were not artists, but fortunately they were very encouraging and found a local artist who started teaching me oil painting lessons at her studio once a week. So I was just before my 4th birthday, I guess, was when I technically started. My style has evolved a little bit since then, but I was very lucky that I kind of stumbled into this early and have just always kind of known that this was what I wanted to do. But I got serious about painting. I mean, I've painted all kinds of things. When I was in college, I did a lot of landscapes. But I've always loved people. And so I guess probably for the last 20 years, I've really focused a lot on figurative subject matter. But I do enjoy painting all kinds of stuff. I'm a little all over the place. It's kind of fun. They tell you, or they told us in art school, that you're supposed to just paint, you know, one thing and become known for that and never paint anything else. So I could not follow that advice. I'm a little too ADD. I want to paint everything. So
I never understood that. People always say I have several styles, and I go, why do I have to have a style?
right. I mean, I feel like anything that I paint, no matter what it is, you can tell it's mine, but that doesn't mean that I only have to just paint one type of subject matter. But people put you in boxes like that. I think galleries do that, collectors do that sometimes. They want to know that you're going to be predictable and make something that they'll be able to sell or that they'll want to buy. I mean, that's fine, I guess, but that's just not for me. Okay, I think that's good enough. You guys probably can't even see anything yet, huh? It just looks like I'm making lines and you can't even see what I'm doing. I promise there's a face on there now. You just can't see it, but you will see. All right, let me get palette knife here.
Oh, when you did your abstract underpainting there, did you have an idea of what you were going to use it for?
Yes, I did it this morning. So I knew it was for today, and I picked the colors because they remind me of her. She's a very fiery personality. All right, so when you paint with palette knives, it's good to have a selection. So I have a bunch here, some more used than others. And I'm going to start with a smaller one so I can kind of lay in some of the structure of her face. All right, let's.
Is your underpainting dry now, or is it tacky or?
No, it's completely dry. I did the underpainting in acrylic, which is a little shortcut that I use sometimes. And now I'm doing the rest in oil. You can always do oil on top of acrylic, but you can't do the opposite. All right, so let's go for it. I like to load up my knife with a bunch of paint and just start piling it in there. Let's see what happens. It starts to feel almost sculptural to me, like you're kind of carving the face, thinking more about the different planes and what they would feel like. I end up kind of moving the knife in the direction of that section of the face, wherever the skin is turning, or if I can sense like there's a plane shift, I try to switch the angle of my marks. And I like for it to be just really thick and globby, like frosting on a cake. I tend to kind of think about the extremes first. So I like to get some of the really lightest highlights and the darkest shadows first.
So you're not really working in a traditional oil painter's way.
Oh gosh, no. I'm working in my way.
I personally work in watercolor and try to work in acrylic, and I work like a watercolor, so it's possible then.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
Okay.
I think that, you know, you learn the rules. Obviously, I learned
Learn to break them. Yeah.
yeah, I learned the traditional ways when I was in college, and that was great. I learned a lot, but then I had to figure out what I wanted to do with that, what works for me, which is not always the same thing.
Do you do the whole thing in palette knife?
Not everything. It's probably when I get into things around the eyes, since this is a smaller canvas, I'll probably switch to a brush, but I still paint it pretty thick and let it build up so that it has the same look.
The reason I asked is some palette knife paintings that I've seen are definitely palette knife paintings.
Mm-hmm.
Are yours
I would say mine's hybrid. If I had to label it, it's not. I'm not a purist about it. I'll use anything. I've used palette knife. I've used squeegees, whatever I can get my hands on, and paintbrushes. My fingers, whatever.
Why do you choose this this part of it to be oil paint rather than acrylic?
I like the feel of the oil paint better. I like the juiciness of it. For me, acrylic is great for an underpainting, but it doesn't have the doesn't glide and move the same way as oils. And it's probably just because that's what I'm used to. But it for me, acrylic feels a little more plasticky, and I can't get it to be as fluid as I can with the oil. So I like using oil for the top. Now, if I'm painting something that's more flat and graphic, though, I will use acrylic for that. I mean, I've done a little bit of everything. I've done watercolors. I've done oil pastel. I actually really like oil pastel, combining that with other mediums. But I keep coming back to oil. Who knows? Maybe it's the smell. So I'm just kind of carving out her face right now, hopefully you can start to see something. I tend to like painting portraits where the model is not looking right at the camera, but looking off in one direction or another. Feels a little less posed, maybe a little more natural. But I mean, again, that's not a rule. I break that one too sometimes.
Your paint does look juicy. Do you use a medium with it, or is it just the paint?
I use Liquin. I like the Liquin original. I just have it in a little jar here. Yeah, mostly because it just makes it glide a little bit more, and it makes it dry quicker. Painting this thick, the drying time is always a factor. Not today because I have to finish this painting in an hour, but normally I would paint a layer and then come back to it, once that layer dries, and add more.
You can see the face coming together.
Yeah. I like to use all kinds of crazy colors.
Do
And-
you
and
work on several paintings at one time then? Like,
Very much
Yeah.
so, yes. While one's drying, I can jump over, work on something else. Or if I just kind of hit a wall with one, which happens sometimes, probably everybody can relate to that, then just instead of throwing my arms up in the air and feeling frustrated, I can just move over and work on something else for a while. That kind of often that gives me the space that I need to be able to go back to the first one and figure out what the problem was. You would think, having done this since I was 3, that I would not still have those issues, but I don't know of any artist who's, no matter how long they've been working, that doesn't still get frustrated sometimes or get stuck or have problems. I think that the more you paint, maybe the more you just get used to that, and that's a part of the process, and it's not as scary as it used to be, because reasonably confident you'll be able to figure it out at some point. But I don't know if there's ever really a point where you feel like you know everything. If there is, I have not reached it.
Was it Degas or Picasso? One of the really famous people said, as he's dying on a deathbed, I was just starting to get it.
I can see that.
I can't remember who it was, so sorry.
I think that was Matisse. I think he was in his 80s.
Oh, wow.
He's just starting to get it.
Well, and artists are always their own worst critic too. I'm always so grateful when I paint something and then I sell it, or I get to send it off to a gallery or something, so that I don't just have to sit around and look at it and pick it apart, because no matter what, I can always find something I don't like in one of my paintings. All right, I think I'm going to switch to a brush just for a little bit so I can get some eye details in. I'm one of those artists that really likes for the painting to be able to look back at me, or at least look off in a direction. So I like to do the eyes pretty early on. That's also breaking the art school rules, but you know what? Who cares?
where was the workshop that you did last week?
Oh, it was virtual. Actually, I've been doing a lot of stuff on Zoom. My friend Melissa and I, she went to art school with me, and she's an amazing, amazing painter. We started a business over the summer called Art Makes Us, and we do all kinds of art lessons and demos and things, all on Zoom. So if anybody wants to come and do future workshops with us, you can just go to artmakesus.com and sign up for our newsletter. We have all kinds of fun stuff like this. But I just did a portrait one. That was the one that he was in last weekend. Painted 4 little portraits in 3 hours. It was a fun group. I've been enjoying all of the opportunities that Zoom has presented. I'd always wanted to teach online, but never really got around to it. And now when COVID hit, then it was the right time.
So what do the art school rules say about portraits and eyes?
Well, just that you should probably hold on to get more of the overall, structure of the composition worked out before you get into anything that's that detail oriented. But what do they know?
Is that the baking the cake before you frost it theory?
Yes, probably. But then, I like to eat dessert first too. So
That works.
I like to go really thick on like highlights and anything that's supposed to look kind of shiny or reflective, because if the paint is thick, then it will catch the light more. And so when it's hanging up, it'll actually look shiny in those areas. Okay. Let's This is fun having a little audience while I paint. Usually I'm very lonely in here. Our artist life can be a little isolating sometimes. So,
Are you still doing the Thursday night art makes this class that people can join, like when it, when they want
yes.
to?
Yes, on Thursday
Okay.
night, we have it's an open studio. So basically you just sign up. You can sign up for one night or you can sign up for a month's worth and just come and hang out and make art. And I just kind of float around and help people as needed, but it's very self-directed. You work on whatever you want.
But kind of makes you get your work done.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it like is mostly just motivating to be around other artists and have that energy of everybody working together.
And what time does that start?
That's on let's see, that's on Thursdays from 4:30 to 6:30.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
This is great. I get to paint, I get to promote all my stuff.
Is that an online class?
It is. Everything that we do with Art Makes Us is on Zoom. So people from all over can participate, and they do, which is really neat. We have people from other countries that join us. In some ways, this has definitely made me feel more connected with other people.
With your education and obviously doing illustration, you have her planes of her face pretty well down, right?
Yes. And that's the most important thing. I think if you are confident in the structure of your drawing and in the basic anatomy, then you can be really loose and expressive and it'll still, hold together. So as soon as I know that I've got things pretty much where they need to be, then that's when I feel like I can really start to have fun.
In color.
Yeah. Although I don't wait too long for that, as you can see.
Oh yeah, I'm with you. I'm a colorist.
Yeah. Oh, totally. I like for my paintings to really look like paintings. I like for the paint to be thick and juicy. We already have the photo, so I don't feel like there's much of a need for me to just recreate that. Has anybody here ever painted with a palette knife before?
Yep, with you.
Yay!
I was in 5th grade. I did.
5th grade, nice.
I do some. This is Bobby. So yeah, I do some.
Okay,
Kind
nice.
of depends what I'm painting.
Yeah, same here. I do some pieces that are still like in this more smooth rendered style, if that's what is needed for that project.
But I have yet to go that large. So when you do a palette knife on something smaller, it's a little challenging.
Yeah, I think that I always try to encourage my students too to at least try going big, because everybody assumes that bigger is more difficult, and I do not think that is true. A lot of times I think that it's actually,
Watercolor is the same way. Bigger is easier.
yeah, I can see that. It's just you have more room to get inside of the shapes and play.
Your palette knife that you're using is a kind of pointy. Is that the one type that you always use?
Yeah, you saw I have like 6 of them, but then I end up just using one the whole time because that's what's in my hand. It's kind of pointy, but it's got a little rounded top.
Gotcha.
But I do have the pointy ones too, so I could get into, those areas. All right, so let's see. Are we on time? Oh my gosh, we're doing good. So we have until like 5:30, is that right?
Unmute myself, just yes.
Okay, good. That's what I'm figuring on, so we'll see how it goes. I like doing these kind of timed things, because otherwise my instinct would be to just spend forever on a painting, and it's kind of nice sometimes to challenge yourself to say, okay, what can you do with this painting in a set period of time? It makes you can't waste any time thinking. You just have to go.
And you can't walk away and take a break.
Nope. With the planes in the face, I always tell my younger students and my adult students too, actually, to think of it as like a soccer ball, the way that a soccer ball is made of geometric pentagons or hexagons or whatever that all fit together to go around the ball. And that's kind of the way that you want to think about the different sections of a face. It's just different shapes that are all connecting, angling in different directions. And if you can, pick out those different planes, you can really make the face feel very dimensional.
Are you talking about angle of the stroke or the color, or both?
Both, really, but I think particularly the angle of the stroke. Okay. Do a little brush work now. Kind of do some big blocking in.
So will this be a Christmas gift as well?
I don't know. We'll see how it turns out. She knows I'm painting her today, so pressure's on.
But she's not watching that we know of.
No, I think one of her kids' birthdays is today, so she was going to be busy making a cake, but she said she might try to pop in at some point.
It's a nice photo to work from.
Yeah. That's it. It's important to get, if you're doing a portrait, to try and get a photo reference that has good directional lighting and, interesting angle.
Did you do that yourself, the painting, the photograph?
I did, yes. And I'm not a photographer. I just took the picture with my phone, but if you know enough to be able to.
Did you set her up that way?
Somewhat, but I'm very loose with that. When I paint people, I always kind of think of it as a collaboration with the subject, and I really want it to be not just about me, but about them and how they want to pose or be portrayed. So
I meant-
I have
I meant
ideas
the
of
lighting. Did you have her in front of lighting? Is that a
Oh yes,
window?
I did. I dragged out some spotlights to
Oh,
make
okay.
sure I had the directional lighting I wanted. Now, one thing that's good to do too is to be thinking about the background as you go, because the colors in the background will always reflect in the face. So I'm going to just take a short little pause here to throw some paint into the background too. Need to get some more white out. I always seem to use way more of that than any other color. You saw the giant piles of paint that I had on my palette, didn't you? I'll show you guys again. My friends that paint very like minimally are always shocked when they see how these like big globs of paint that I use. But and I have two palettes here that are both the same size because I like to have options.
Which of the whites do you like to use?
I use titanium.
I see on the photo, it looks like you have cool light on the face and warm light in the back. Is that intentional?
Yeah, I like that. I like that contrast, that little bit of reflected light over on the left. I'm changing the background though from the photo. I'm gonna put a few different things back there. We'll see what happens. I like to kind of just I usually kind of zero in and make the eyes, nose, maybe the mouth a little more realistic, and then let it just get really loose, moving away from those spaces. I mean, it's loose in those spaces too, but even looser farther out. Okay. Let me get you see, I'm just all over the canvas. I work in one spot a little bit, and then I work somewhere else. I like to build up everything kind of at the same time and at the same level, and then go back and kind of add more details to everything that same way. My computer always ends up getting covered with paint when I do these things. I'm just looking down at my trackpad right now. It's bright red.
Now, I didn't catch where you're from. Are you local in the Monterey area or?
I live in Monterey now, but I'm originally from Columbus, Ohio. Moved out here in 2016. Love it here. Was an upgrade from Ohio, I will say. I've had a lot of great opportunities for my artwork too since moving out here. So it was a really good thing.
It looks like you do some of your mixing right on the canvas, huh?
I do. It's funny because I always, spend all this time at the beginning of a painting session mixing every color that I think I'll need. And then I find that as soon as I start painting, I don't have any of the colors I want. And I have to just start mixing more as I go. So it's a little of both. I mean, I try to pre-mix some, but I always end up needing more.
So it looks like you're not going to try and harmonize with your underpainting with what you're doing.
No, I like to use underpaintings that almost contrast where I plan on ending up. So if I know that I want kind of cooler tones in certain areas, I really like having that, like a warmer underpainting, so that I'm almost fighting against it. I like that. I don't know. I like that tension that happens with that. And I'll leave little pieces of the underpainting showing here and there.
So it looks like you vary the thickness of the paint application.
Yes. I wish I could say there was like a really scientific thought process behind that, but it's more just what I feel like doing at that moment. Sometimes I think a lot of what we do as artists, regardless of our style, is just, it comes down to being very intuitive. You can learn all these techniques and concepts and use them, but I find like still it's ultimately just the big experiment every time I'm working, and I like that about it. I like feeling like I don't really know what I'm doing. If that makes any sense. It's kind of fun because it never gets boring that way.
So when you paint that thick, how long would a painting like this take to dry?
Usually is dry to the touch in about a week because of the liquid. I think if I wasn't using that, it would probably take longer. But oil paint takes a long time to really dry, like 6 months to a year sometimes, to be like truly dry all the way through. Oh, there you are, Dominique. You're starting to pop out here.
So does that mean that you don't varnish it until 6 months?
Yeah, I don't. And that's always an issue for me because I usually don't have it around that long. So
Yeah.
whenever I send it off to a collector or to a gallery or whatever, I'll include a little sheet, explaining about the varnishing process. And you can take artwork to, most frame shops will varnish it. So I just say,
Oh,
recommendation, if you, 6 months to a year from now, take this and varnish
do you
it.
think the varnish changes as opposed, like if they use gloss or different?
I love the way that my paintings look after they're varnished, because I think what happens is when they dry, they just dull a little bit. The colors get a little bit more dull, and as you can see, I really like vibrant color. So when they're varnished, that makes them kind of look more like what they looked like when they were wet. I do love that. I wish you could do it sooner, but the problem is if you varnish it too soon, then you trap the moisture down inside. If the paint is wet underneath, maybe dry on the surface, but wet underneath, you could trap the moisture of the paint and it'll crack.
Oh, crack.
What surface are you painting on?
This is just a cotton canvas.
Do you ever use board?
I do. I've used board. I like that. I really like when I'm doing paintings that are not this thick and chunky. I will sometimes paint on Belgian linen. I love that too.
Oh, right.
That's great for like more realistically rendered things.
Do you find that oil paint darkens as it dries? And then if you do, how do you compensate or plan for that?
I actually have that problem more with acrylic. At least for me, I've noticed that the values tend to stay pretty true, but the intensity of the color is what starts to fade when it dries.
Which of the varnishes do you recommend over the thick paint?
I personally like to use the Damar spray varnish, because when I've tried using the brush on kind with all my thick, paint, it kind of puddles in places and it doesn't cover evenly. So I use the Damar spray varnish. I like the matte finish because I think when it's too shiny, sometimes it's hard to appreciate the work. So that's what I use when I can.
Paul, I have a question about the black or gray that you're using for the hair and the ear. What color is that? Did you mix that?
I did. I don't own just like a black out of the tube because I always find that to be a little too dull. It kind of just sucks the life out of wherever I use it. So I mix a kind of a blackish color using burnt umber and ultramarine blue. That's what I like. I pretty much always just mix that on my palette, and that way I have it, and then I'll take some of it off to the side and add some white so that I get a few different shades of gray. I just like being able to reach over and grab a little gray if I need to neutralize a color or something. And even though it doesn't look like it, I do that sometimes. I do use neutrals too. Neutrals are important because it makes the intense colors, you can appreciate them more if there's neutrals too. So, but that's how I make my black color.
She seems very young and smooth. Do you keep your painting angular or do you soften her?
I don't know. We'll see what happens.
It's just-
I usually like to start out very angular because that helps me to think about the planes and stuff.
Right,
But then I might soften her a bit.
I'm sorry, I just haven't seen your other work.
Oh yeah, no, that's okay. It's all over the place. I try to let the painting tell me what it wants.
I just realized one of your paintings is right in back of me.
Oh yeah, that is. There's one of mine.
Painting of me also. So
I
how
know,
cool
that's
is
a good
that?
one.
Yeah.
That one's a little smoother, I think, than how I'm painting this one today.
You did it with a brush more than a palette knife.
Yeah.
And he smoothed out some of my wrinkles.
Oh, please, you don't have any of those.
And he didn't make my hands look as old. That was my favorite part.
You've got to make your collectors happy.
There you go.
One of the benefits of painting like this for me is that it's really taught me, even when I am painting something in a more realistic style, it's made me less afraid to use unexpected colors. And actually, I find a lot of times painting faces, the more other colors you can bring into it besides just the flesh tones, it actually will make it feel more realistic, because our skin does reflect so many different colors from our environment around us. And if you only use the the actual skin pigment color, it'll feel very, very flat and not alive. I like she had a very warm light hitting on the left side, so I'm throwing in some super bright colors over there now. I want to get that contrast of the orange and the blue. I like that. I guess color theory class in college does pay off, even though it was kind of torture. Gonna go a little, I'm feeling a little like greenish over in the background of here. I really like painting wet on wet like this, because when you drag one color up through another, then you get all these interesting, layering of color that just happens very organically. It's not really like in control all that much. It just kind of happens, and whatever isn't working, I just cover up and do something else. But I think that is one of the things that I like the most about the palette knife. Sometimes when I only paint with a brush, I just after a while start to feel like all of my brush strokes look too contrived or too controlled or something. When I throw in a little bit of the palette knife, that for me is enough to just help add some more spontaneity into the process. I'm able to just go in and scratch things.
Was there much texture on that underpainting, or was it just all in color?
There was. I painted the underpainting with the palette knife, so it was very lumpy. And I like that too. I like having chaos of color, and I like having chaos of texture to play off of and build up the image from that. Okay. Get a little something happening down here at the bottom, and then I'll at least have a first rough pass over everything. Let's see. I always tell my students, don't get hung up on details until you've at least covered the canvas. That's all. I like to call it that more so than even just saying doing a base coat or an underpainting or something. Just cover the canvas, because that makes it feel very low pressure. Anybody can cover a canvas. It doesn't have to look good. Yeah, we're just putting some paint on there. You might be looking at the reference photo and wondering what I'm doing down here, but when I get farther away from the face is where I really stop looking at the photo and just kind of play with color. I like for it to become almost abstract. I think that's the direction my art is moving. Just keep getting more and more interested in abstraction. Like just throwing random globs of color. Why not?
When you go in to do the nose and the mouth shapes, will you use a brush for that? And also, do you use a soft brush because the paint is so thick, or do you use something like a stiff bristle?
I tend to use the stiffer bristle at first. So like when you saw me using a brush, so far it's been the stiffer one. But then when I go in to do details, I'll switch to a softer brush so it doesn't totally disturb everything that's there, just kind of glides over top of it a little better. I use a lot of cheap brushes, to be honest, like cheap cheap brushes from Michael's, because I'm very abusive to paint brushes, and even when I have the nice expensive ones, they don't last very long with me. So the cheap ones work just as well as the expensive ones. They just don't last as long, but the expensive ones don't last long for me either.
And will that be with shorter hairs or longer hairs to work on such thick paint?
I'll show you when I get to that point. Longer.
So that means you want it to stay on the surface. You don't want to dig in.
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, there may be exceptions, but in general, once I put something down, I kind of work with that and just massage it into place, hopefully. I really love being able to just skim over the surface and let the paint kind of catch in some areas and not in others. You can kind of see as I'm doing some of these highlights in the hair that, you know, it's the palette knife does not cover solid. It just kind of, wherever there's something that's raised either from the texture of my underpainting, or it will sometimes even just catch onto the globs of wet paint that are there. But I like that skipping that happens where some of the color shows and some does not. Palette knives are also a lot easier to clean than paintbrushes. That's another another perk. If you don't like cleaning your brushes, try a knife. You don't have, all you have to do is wipe them and they're good to go. Well, lighter and warmer down here is what I'm feeling. Do you all talk to yourselves while you work? Because I would probably be saying this exact same thing whether you were here or not.
Yeah, all the time. Nobody else listens.
I know. I just like pretend I have an audience, whether I really do or not.
For the small details, that's when you'd use a brush, huh?
Yeah, for the most part, I would say.
I've only tried the palette knife a few times, so that's why I've got so many questions.
Oh, hey, ask all the questions you want, and just know that my answers are not necessarily the official palette knife rule book answers. You might, if you asked a different artist that works with the palette knife, they'd probably say totally different things, because I think everybody kind of adapts, you know, the techniques to what works best for them. But for me, I like to kind of, I guess you would say blocking in. I like to block it in with the knife as much as possible. And then I kind of use the brush more after that point. But I mean, I used it even prior to, so it's whatever works really. All right, I think I'm ready to go in and do some more brush work now. Let's make the eyes really pop. So I have the photo here on my screen right next to all of your beautiful faces. So I'm zooming in now, and that's an important thing when you're painting portraits. You really need to be able to see what you're painting. I can't tell you how many students I've tried to teach where they were looking at some photo on their phone that was like the size of a postage stamp and not understanding why the painting isn't working. And it's like, well, you have to be able to see it. So take the time to either, I just usually have my laptop next to me and I'll zoom in on whatever part I'm painting. But you can also print out your photo references and even like do special crops on different areas so that you can see, you know, what you're painting. That's important. All right, let's get these eyes really laid in now. For me, eyes are all about the little highlights and reflections. They have to feel round. And I like painting right into wet paint. You know, it's different than when you let the layers dry and come back to it. But there's something that's kind of nice about the interaction of putting down one color and then letting it kind of merge with what's already there.
So are you resting your hand on your pinky, or are you just balancing it off the tip of the paintbrush?
I use my pinky and I find
Yeah.
like the tiniest little dry spot and rest my finger there.
Okay.
It doesn't always work. Sometimes the painting's totally covered and I can't do that, but I do the pinky thing.
So it's interesting how you go to the tiniest brush. That's like a number 1 or double
Yeah.
something.
Yep. I want to really get into that eye and be able to make some finishing touches. If you can get the eyes looking good, you can really get away with it just about anything in a portrait. I like to use accents of red a lot, especially when, you know, when I can see them in the reference, and I do see them here. And then I'll exaggerate or embellish the colors that I see if I want that kind of a feeling. Go up a little bit in brush size, not too much. These are my super cheap Michaels brushes, but they work great for me. There she is. Okay, now I'm going to go up a little bit in size, kind of this, I like this angle brush. And when you're painting the eyes, the area right around the eyes is almost just as important as the eye itself. You want to really make that surrounding area feel like it can contain the eye. You want to think about the eye socket and just the structure of the face. Because otherwise you could paint the most beautiful eyes, but they'll just look like they're floating or on a painted egg or something if there isn't any structure around them. This is what happens when you use cheap brushes though sometimes. Put it right back together. Okay, let's see here. And so as someone mentioned earlier, you can see that I am kind of softening it a little bit in places, but it's still very chunky. I think for this piece, that's probably how it's going to stay. I'm liking that look. Okay, let me get the other eye in. My little brush. Okay. Everything on this side's a bit darker, more in shadow. And I don't have anywhere to put my pinky this time, so I'm just gonna have to freehand it. She's got great eyelashes. Nice. Okay. Sometimes you can take a mark that you made with the palette knife and just shave a little bit of it off or refine it a little bit, and it will look as though you made this effortless mark with the palette knife that ended up being the exact perfect shape. That illusion of effortlessness is always like I think a good goal for this type of painting, even though I have never painted one that actually was effortless. They always take effort, but I think if you do it right, they feel like they just kind of happen. Okay. Let's get her nose laid out better. Too many choices. Okay, I'm going to do a little bit of, there's kind of like this reflected light that's on this side. So I'm going to put that out. A lot of what I'll do at this stage, especially when I'm, I only have a short amount of time left to finish, is kind of look at the piece overall and go back and forth with my eyes between the painting and the reference and just see what little touches could I add that would make the most impact overall on the piece, that would, add something to it, help tell more of the story. Because obviously I'm going for an expressive style, and people always ask, how do you know when you're finished? Since the goal is not realism, you would know it was finished with a realistic painting when it looked realistic. But when it's a more expressive piece, you get to decide that for yourself. And it's more, I think, for me, about when it feels like it captures the essence of the person, or when it just feels like makes the right kind of, captures the right feeling, I guess, rather than an exact, picture. Okay. A little highlight here. Now let me work my way on down to the mouth. So we've got shadow here, fades into this. just like with the eyes, when you're painting the mouth, the area around it is almost more important than the mouth itself, because you have to create that facial structure to support the mouth to make it make sense. That's one of the interesting things that I learned when I was studying illustration, because you spend a lot of time working on how do you capture different facial expressions, sometimes like very, overboard to be more stylized as an illustration. But I learned that the typical things that you would associate with different emotions, like sadness, you might think of a tear, or anger, you'd think of a frown or something. But it's not just those features that are affected, it's actually everything on the face, and every part, your cheeks, your chin, all of it adds to that, conveying that emotion in the face. Go a little lighter in the shadow. Shape her mouth a little better. Zooming back out now so I can kind of see the whole face and what I want to work on. I'm going to work on that cheek now. Soften that up a bit. Still blocky and chunky and brushy, but sometimes if there's too strong of a leap, maybe from dark to light, or from one color to another, just going in between them and either kind of mushing it all together or adding in kind of a nice in-between color to help soften that transition a little bit can be all that it really needs.
Busy.
Okay, I don't want to miss out on the chance to get to do some fun stuff with her hair, so I'm going to do that now, just with my brush. Drag a few strands. When people paint hair, my best advice for that is to not think about individual hairs so much, but to focus on strands, or clumps, groupings of hair, and then also the negative spaces. So I'll kind of paint a big solid clump like that, and then I'll go in with the background color and just kind of pop out little sections like that. I try not to make them too repetitive. I'll do some that are dark, some that are lighter, because they all catch the light differently. I like to just not overdo it, but have a few loose strands and just add some movement to the piece too. Okay. All right, need to get some more light on her head up here. Really get the shape of her hairline in.
If you were to make some corrections on that, would you have to scrape the paint back or what would you do? Because
You
it's
definitely could. If it's still wet, you could easily just use your palette knife and scrape stuff off. Once it dries, if you want to, if you need to, make a correction and the texture isn't right, you can just use sandpaper and sand it down.
I'm sure you'd have to wait quite a while if you're sanding oil paint.
Well, I mean, yes, probably. I don't wait though. I do it whenever I want to. I did a series last year that was right around the time of or was it last year? I guess whenever the last election was, I did a series called Voter Profile where I painted people who would have been denied the right to vote at some point in US history for various reasons, gender or ethnic background or whatever it might be, because our country has a pretty bad history with that kind of stuff.
Or being a felon too.
Yeah, but for that, so I painted the models, but I collaged down ballots from whatever year their group would have been, granted the right to vote. So that was the backdrop for their portrait. And then I painted their faces on top of it, but I ended up painting, because I'm used to painting so thick and like this, I ended up covering too much of the palette, or I mean the
Ballots.
yeah, the ballots, thank you. And so I sanded the paint and the ballot just showed right through again. It was really cool. And it was a little scary because I just, painted these faces and stuff, but I wasn't happy with it yet. So sometimes you have to be afraid. You can't be afraid to mess it up if you're not quite happy, and it's worth pushing it further.
So what kind of sandpaper? Is that like a wet dry paper or that regular garnet paper for wood, or?
I used the
Abrasive?
block, the little sandpaper block,
Ah,
because that made it a little easier to hold. But I used a pretty gritty one. I don't know exactly what kind, but I was ready to totally screw it up, like if I needed to, but thankfully it worked really well. But that to me is the fun of this. It's all a big experiment. You can't be afraid of that. That's what it's all about.
process.
Yeah, I'm very much about the process. And I think that goes back to that teacher that I had as a child, that she made it all about the process and all about being creative. It wasn't about, make something perfect that's going to impress everybody. It was just, have fun, try something new, express yourself. And that's how I've always approached art. And so I'm never afraid of it, or I'm not afraid to mess up, because what's the worst thing that'll happen? I'll make an ugly painting. That's all right. No one will die.
So keep on the journey until you get there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there are so many amazing artists, and I know some personally, some people that I went to college with even, who are so talented, but just, for whatever reason, get burnt out or get frustrated or feel insecure and end up quitting. And I think that's such a waste. It's like, you don't have to impress anybody with what you're doing. It's all about just expressing yourself. It's what it should be.
So do you have work in a gallery? And I ask because, you know, keeping some kind of a consistency with your work or not worrying about how it comes out.
Yes, I work with different galleries for different styles of my work. So that's kind of been my way around that issue. I'll, you know, so because galleries do like consistency, so I'll work with the gallery and maybe, you know, in one gallery where I'll just show like portraits, and then another one. I also do a lot of work that kind of deals with themes that are specific to the LGBT community. And so I have different galleries I work with for that. So that's, I've just been a little all over the place. And I've also gotten a lot of people over the years who will now just follow me and buy work directly from me too, off of my website. So that's been great, because when you can do that, then you don't have to pay the gallery commission.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's one reason I never approached a gallery, is because I'll do a lot of different paintings and I know they like a consistency. And I thought, well, but I don't want to be locked into a box.
Yeah, no. And, you know, some galleries, every gallery that I've worked with has been very understanding about that. They just, you know, will say that, you know, for their particular client base, like, this is what's going to work for us, but that doesn't mean that I can't still go and paint whatever I want to. Just doesn't, I just might not send it to them. I did have some galleries early on when I was doing, like I was saying, a lot of LGBT themed work and stuff that was more, it was very personal. It wasn't really that I was trying to have commercial success with that. I was just painting it because I wanted to. And that was some of the earliest stuff of mine that started to gain some attention. And then some of the more mainstream galleries that I was working with said, well, we would like to, you know, work with you or keep showing your stuff, but the problem is people come into the gallery and they Google your name and then they see all this other stuff and they don't want to, you know, buy your work here. And so they were trying to talk me into using an alias for different, you know, subject matter, and I just could not.
Oh my God, what'd you tell them?
Well, I won't use the exact words that I use.
High five, high five.
But
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
they didn't
you know,
try to discourage you. They just wanted you to have
yeah,
multiple
no, they were,
personality names.
yes, no, I mean, I actually think that they were genuinely trying to be helpful. And I do know of, I mean, I have friends who are artists that do that for that very reason. And so I don't fault anybody for whatever decisions they have to make for their work. But to me, it just felt too much like going back in the closet. And what I actually said to the gallery owner was, if there's somebody that would not want to buy one of my paintings because they saw that I painted other stuff, then I wouldn't want them owning my work anyway. So it's fine. and it, you know, and then I said, if that's a problem for you, then we probably should not work together.
So it sounds like you remedied that.
Yeah, I did. I think,
How did
you know, you have to be genuine. You have to be true to yourself. That's the most important thing as an artist. And that's what I tell whenever I get to go and speak with college, you know, students, art students. That's the advice that I always will give them, because it's easy to try and chase trends and do what, you know, seems like it would be popular. But the thing you have to realize is that's what everybody's doing. And if you can find that weird, unique thing that makes your work special, that's going to be a much better way to channel your energy, because people just respond to genuine, and it won't please everybody, but it doesn't have to. It just has to please enough so that you can make a living.
How did you approach a gallery?
I always tried to make sure that I knew about the gallery, that it was a good fit for me first, because I have a few friends who own galleries, and they say that's the gallery owner's biggest pet peeve, is when they get, submissions from people who clearly have no concept what their gallery is about or what type of work they represent, and it ends up being a giant waste of their time. So I make sure I know what the gallery is about, and I will, if it's somewhere that I can actually go to in person, I'll try to go and meet with the gallery owner in person. But a lot of times it's just an email inquiry at first and say, here's some examples of my work. And I'll even point out artists that they represent who I feel, have some similarity to what I do, just to make it very clear that, it's not just some kind of mass email I'm sending out to a bunch of people. A lot of gallery owners do not even accept submissions at all, though. So you have to get creative sometimes. Going to openings, just kind of becoming a part of the art community, I think is very helpful.
So are you represented all in California?
I'm actually not in any galleries in California right now.
Really?
No, I have a lot of collectors here, but no galleries. Especially during COVID, my gallery stuff went way down, and I just started doing a lot more direct with collectors. It's been a rough time for galleries. Well, it's been a rough time for everybody, but it's been extra hard for art galleries because they need that foot traffic.
So if your paintings take 6 months to dry, do you wait before you ship them?
Oh, no. They're dry to the touch in a week, so you can ship them and do whatever you have to do after that.
Really? Wow.
Which is a good thing, because I usually work to the last minute on a project.
So do you have to ship them in some kind of special container? Because I would imagine the paint underneath would be wet and you don't want to disturb that.
Yeah, I use the art boxes at FedEx because they actually suspend the painting inside the box. So it touches along the edges that kind of holds it in, but their art boxes are awesome. I ship paintings out every week.
Wow.
And I've never had one damaged working with FedEx. So, but there are other ways you can do it too. I ship work a lot to people in California, and I have somebody here who's an art handler, and I just pay him and he'll drive it to anywhere in California. So last week he took 3 paintings to someone in San Francisco for me, and he's gone to LA and stuff like that, and it's actually cheaper than what it would cost to ship them. So that's
amazing.
Yeah.
Especially with the gas. I mean, has he shipped anything or driven anything lately?
Yeah, just last week he took 3
Wow.
paintings to San Francisco for me, and it was still cheaper than what it would have cost. They were big though. I mean, if they're small paintings, I'll ship them myself, but if they're big, then that's when I'll use him.
Yeah, that was gonna be my next question around how big. You say that the 24 by 36 here is small. So
Yeah,
what are normal
This
sizes?
feels very small to me. My I would say my standard size that I really like to paint at is like 3 by 4 feet.
Okay.
Bigger is always better, but then it gets really hard to ship.
And I'm assuming that they're unframed.
Yeah, they're unframed. I paint the edges of the canvas just black, and so they show really well that way. The first gallery I was with, I was going and panicking and trying to frame everything, and the gallery owner said, "Don't bother." He said, "The collector's going to want to frame it, to work with their decor anyway." So I don't ever frame mine. Unless the only time I'll frame it is if a collector specifically asks because he or she wants me to choose the frame, then I will do it and they'll pay for it.
I see that the canvas you're working on looks kind of narrow, maybe an inch or 3/4. Do you usually do like a 2-inch gallery wrap or something?
Yes, usually I would use I like the thick gallery wrap canvas. Now there was one delivery that I did not have the art handler do this was like, gosh, I guess it's been almost a year now. I got this awesome commission to do a painting for Dolly Parton. She wanted a painting for her living room, and somehow her manager found me on Instagram and asked if I would do it. And I've loved Dolly when I was a kid. So I was, and still do. I think she's awesome. So I was super excited. And they said, would you mind, delivering it to her house and hanging it up? I said, no, I don't mind. I'll do that.
Whoa, was that all the way to Tennessee?
No, it was her home in LA.
Wow, that's nice.
It was really cool. It was fun. It's a big painting of butterflies. That was what she wanted. I used the Belgian linen for that one. If you've never tried it, you really should. It's just a beautiful surface to paint on. And I see we've got 1 more minute, so let me back up and make sure I like everything. It looks like her. I'm happy. Of course, I would love to spend 20 more hours on it, but that's.
Will you attack it later and stand back and look at it?
Oh yeah, I'm sure I will, because I'm really liking where it's going. But the more time I have, the more I just like to do little tweaks and refine things. So I'm sure I'll do that. And I probably will give it to her because I think she'll enjoy it. All right, so if you want to, you can go back to spotlighting the other me now.
Can you just turn that so it's not at an angle to the
yeah, sure.
camera? Because I want to see it. Wow, that looks really good. Oopsie, now it's shining. Wow, that
Nice.
looks very nice. Yeah.
Speed painting. Nice going.
Oh, thank you. That was fun. Thank you all for keeping me company while I worked on that. That was
And
fun.
it does look very juicy.
Oh yes, I love that.
Thank
Is
you.
that a self-portrait behind you?
Let's see. Nope, that's just a friend of mine. But same technique.
Yeah, with the palette knife.
Yes.
Really like those. Nice.
Thank you. Thank
And
you
this
all
is
so
you
much.
Well, this
Um,
has been great. Any other questions before?
You did that tight one behind you too,
Yeah.
to your left.
Oh, over here. Yes. That was from my more kind of like smooth, realistic period.
Excellent. Very nice
Oh,
demonstration.
you.
Thank you very much.
Oh,
Well, it's good to see you.
yeah, good. Are you going to teach again portrait work like you did a couple weeks ago?
Yes, I will. I'm going to do the portrait one and also maybe do some like figure painting, figure drawing, stuff like that. So we're adding a bunch more classes. But yes, if anybody's interested in any of those classes, you can just check out artmakesus.com. We have a bunch of stuff coming up, and you can sign up for our newsletter there too to stay informed.
What if you don't paint oils?
You can paint anything you want. anytime we do a class, we always say like, here's what the instructor will be using, and if you want to get the same thing you can, but all of our classes are very open and you can really do whatever you want. So we've had people do, I'll be working in oil and someone else will be working in watercolor. I've had somebody doing a sculpture while I was painting, so anything goes.
Especially like on Thursday nights.
Yeah.
Doing their own thing, but you're helpful for whatever medium. I mean, I've taken them, so I know that you are.
That one's fun. I enjoyed that.
And it's the same setup that everybody's like directs onto what they're working on.
Yeah, everybody on the Thursday night class is just it's open studio is what it's called. So people just work on whatever they want to work on. I'm not demoing anything. I just sit here and spotlight each person and talk with them and help them through whatever issues they're having or give them some suggestions or
say, stop, don't do that.
yes. Normally not. Normally I just say it looks awesome.
I don't think he'd say stop.
Oh, I have.
I tend to be very like, gentle and encouraging for the most part. I'm not like the mean art school teachers that rip up your work. And
No.
some of those teachers was not fun. So I
With
don't
watercolor, I've had to go, wait, I can't back it up if you go any further.
know that with watercolor. That's true. You like that. You can see the way I paint does not
Well, you
translate.
can paint over boo-boos with acrylic or oil. With watercolor, I'm going, no, stop, wait, I'll be right there. Wait, just 1 minute.
I need to take your class, it sounds like.
I need the facial. I didn't go to art school. I've taken from privately, and I don't have the background of figure painting, and it's all years of experience, but still I don't have that base.
I always say that I think all artists are self-taught, whether you went to art school or not, because
You take what you want and throw away the rest.
exactly. And so, and I love that about it. I think that sometimes art can get a little bit of an elitist kind of reputation, and I like to try to just counteract that as much as possible. I think everyone is an artist, everyone's capable of being an artist, and there's no,
Totally agree.
there's no like degree you have to have in order to call yourself an artist. It just
Well, I could follow along with you in the structural of the face, but to do it myself, I think I get bogged up in the rules.
The best thing I can say is to try to convince yourself as much as possible that you're actually not painting a face, as weird as that sounds, and just think of it as shapes. Sometimes even just turning over the canvas so that it's upside down and your reference is also upside down can be a way to help with that.
What about, the spatial space between eyes and the, between how long the nose is? I'm sure yours is innate, but
well, but not, it hasn't always been, and sometimes I still screw it up. It's all about the relationships of shapes to each other. So if you can get one thing on there that you like, and then you build outward from there and make sure everything else is just aligning with that thing. And as long as you're kind of using something as an anchor, that's
because you started with an eye, and I was like going, oh my God, I didn't even draw a circle and a muzzle or a oval or
I just like to dive in.
I loved it.
It sounds great. So many of us did too, Paul. If you'd see in the comments here in the chat, people were saying thank you and courageous painting and
that's so nice.
Yeah, that is. And I think we all just need to be courageous and not be afraid to destroy and remove and take down and build up again. So
totally.
It was really inspiring. Thank you.
Good. Well, you're welcome. Thanks for inviting me. I was really honored that you guys wanted to spend the time watching me. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you. Happy
Thank you. Same to you.
Forward to seeing you.
Bye. Bye.